I'm Declan Harvey. Hello. The headlines on BBC Newsline. The GAA has said for the first time it may consider increasing its contribution to a new casement park.
The GAA will play its part, however, that will be with other government partners, and we will be happy to consider additional funding towards Casement Park. However, we do need to see the colour of the money from the UK Treasury.
Tributes are being paid this evening to the renowned political journalist Ken Reid, who has died at the age of 69. A Belfast-based healthcare company is fined £50,000 following the death of this pensioner. We'll hear how this man's life was changed by a serious crash in County Tyrone as rural road accidents increase. Christmas tree disappointment in Bushmills sparks a council rethink.
He made almost 90 appearances for Northern Ireland. We hear from Kyle Lafferty on the massive regrets he has about his career.
And it's a bitterly cold night with a wintry warning from the Met Office. I'll have the details shortly.
Welcome to Wednesday's programme. For years, there have been concerns about what seemed to be the ever-spiralling cost of redeveloping Casement Park into a modern state-of-the-art stadium. But for the first time, the estimated price tag for the venue has fallen. This programme has seen a new figure of around £270 million, 10% less than the previous estimate. What's envisaged now in West Belfast is a simpler design, but what is perhaps also significant today is that for the first time, the GAA has indicated it may increase how much it's prepared to contribute to covering the cost. Here's our political correspondent, Gareth Gordon.
By now, the diggers should be in and a new casement rising from the rubble, but the only thing building here is frustration. The GAA recently met the Communities Minister Gordon Lyons, a meeting the BBC has been told was fraught and tetchy. Now that the dream of hosting football games at the Euros is gone, the vision for a new stadium has changed.
We are still looking at a capacity of over 30,000. We can still do that with a more basic and modest fit out.
But as to how much even that would cost, we've only had guesswork until now. The BBC understands the GAA now believes the new design for a basic and modest casement park would still cost £270 million, less than once planned, but that would still leave a shortfall of £150 million to be found from somewhere. The GAA would not confirm that figure today. However, would you deny that figure?
Well, what I would say to you, Gareth, today is that the 400 million figure that was previously quoted was not a proposition that came from the GAA. Clearly it was a figure that was speculated in relation to the delivery of a Euro specification stadium, much more significant than the GAA's Gaelic Games Stadium. So the figures being quoted today are closer to the working assumptions that the GAA are working on, and we actually would expect that when we get through the process of tenders and further on, that the actual construction costs of a stadium would be even less than what's been speculated on.
So far the GAA has pledged £15 million. The Minister thinks that should increase.
I think that the original contribution of £15 million should be looked at again by the GAA. I think it's reasonable for that to be looked at. If there is an additional contribution being looked from elsewhere, if the GAA are looking for a stadium that will require more than the resource that is currently there, I think it's right that additional resource comes from the GAA also.
That's previously been ruled out by the GAA, but listen to this.
And I think that that's a fair assessment, and what we've always said about that, Gareth, is that the GAA is one of a number of stakeholders here. Since Gordon Lyons became Communities Minister, the GAA has invested over £4 million on the Casement Park project on site. There will be a new funding agreement required to deliver the project. The GAA will play its part, however, that will be with other government partners, and we will be happy to consider additional funding towards Casement Park. However, we do need to see the colour of the money from the UK Treasury.
So a slight hint of movement, but not yet a game changer. Gareth Gordon, BBC Newsline.
Tributes are being paid this evening to the former political editor at UTV, Ken Reid, who has died after a long illness. He was 69. In a career of more than a quarter of a century on our screens, Ken reported and explained some of the key moments in the peace process. This evening, First Minister Michelle O'Neill described him as a true giant in local journalism. The DUP's Gavin Robinson said he'd retained the respect and affection of politicians on all sides. Our correspondent, Mark Simpson, looks back.
Our political correspondent, Ken Reid's waiting for us. Ken, any word of the General's report?
Well, the Northern Ireland office, Mike, are saying that the report will be delivered tonight.
Ken Reid was a familiar face on local TV screens for almost 3 decades, reporting from home and abroad.
This is Ken Reid for Counterpoint in Washington. All sides agree that many problems still lie ahead. Ken Reid, UTV Live, Dublin. Here in Downing Street this morning. This is Ken Reid for UTV Live in Westminster.
He spent a lot of time there during debates about Brexit, but it was at Stormont that he made his name, covering the marathon negotiations which eventually led to the Good Friday Agreement in 1998.
You must remember, this is the most exciting period. There's been 2 years here with absolutely nothing happening. At least we think we're going to get a result one way or the other on Thursday night. Now, of course, people want to know what's the early reaction. I think it's fair to say that the Unionists are fairly cool at this stage.
Ken Reid started working for UTV in 1994. He only retired 3 years ago.
The highlight of my career was, I think, as a journalist, was when I broke the story that Ian Paisley was going to resign as First Minister and leader of the DUP. That was quite a day.
His many achievements in journalism were marked earlier this year by Queen's University. Along with the former BBC political editor Stephen Grimison, he was awarded a special medal.
It means an awful lot. I was absolutely delighted when I was told about the honour, and I'm also so pleased that so many of my colleagues and my family are here to enjoy the occasion.
Since then, sadly, Stephen and now Ken have died. He was a towering figure in political journalism here, trusted by the audience and respected on all sides wherever he went.
Ken Reid, UTV Live, Stormont.
Memories of Ken Reid, who has died at the age of 69. A Belfast-based healthcare company has been fined £50,000 following the death of a resident at a Lisburn nursing home. Pat Thompson died a few days after she fell from her bed. She'd been left unattended. Ita Dungan has this report.
Pat Thompson was a resident at Rose Lodge nursing home in Lisburn before she died. On the 18th of May 2020, a junior member of staff at Rose Lodge was directed by a more senior member of staff to provide personal care to Mrs. Thompson. She moved the elderly lady onto a bed and left her sitting up on the edge of the bed, unattended. Mrs. Thompson fell forward onto the floor and suffered multiple injuries. She died a few days later. Harmony Community Care Services, which is based outside Belfast, pleaded guilty to a single health and safety breach. An investigation carried out by the Health and Safety Executive found that Mrs. Thompson had care plans in place which identified that she needed 2 carers so that she could be moved safely. However, there was no formal system in place to identify whether personal care should be provided by 1 or 2 carers. Instead, the investigation found staff relied on a daily informal assessment of how a resident presented to determine how their needs were met. The Health and Safety Executive Northern Ireland said this informal assessment highlighted the failure of the company to ensure that adequate systems were in place to ensure the safety of residents and to ensure that all staff were adequately trained and supervised. Harmony CSS Limited have said they are now disputing some of the HSE's findings. The company, however, has been fined £50,000. Ita Dungan, BBC Newsline.
Well, thanks for watching this evening. There's still more to come before 7 o'clock, including Tiernan Lynch, officially unveiled as Derry City's new manager. More than one person a week died on our roads last year. New figures reveal there has also been a dramatic increase in the amount of people dying on our rural roads. The picture suggests they are more dangerous than our busier main routes. Our reporter Niall McCracken has this.
Tom Haddon was driving a bin lorry down a country road when another truck collided with his vehicle. The driver of the other vehicle denied speeding, but a judge imposed a temporary driving ban after finding they were driving too fast. 7 years on, Tom Haddon says he still lives with the physical and mental impact of the collision.
The accident took place. I was trapped then in the lorry for the best part of an hour and a half, 2 hours. My leg was just absolutely crushed. I feared the worst. I would never walk again. I was left with a frame from my ankle right to my hip, and then I basically had to learn to walk. It changed my whole life. I have to live with the pain. You know, the rural roads are just need to be more alert, just prepare for every corner.
Last year there were 71 fatalities as a result of road traffic collisions here. 66% of those occurred on rural roads, and that number has been on the increase.
Well, rural roads have their own issues, narrow, slow-moving traffic like agricultural vehicles, and we also have, tight bends, and so basically there's certain things that we can all do. Very simply, don't drive if you've had alcohol or drugs. Don't use your phone, slow down, ensure that you and everyone else in the car has got their seatbelt on, and also pay attention to the road conditions.
In a statement, Infrastructure Minister John O'Dowd added, "I appeal to all road users to think about their behaviour, be mindful of others and proceed with care at all times to ensure everyone gets home safe." Niall McCracken, BBC Newsline.
Prices are rising more quickly again. The rate at which they are increasing went up from September to October. It means year on year there's been a 2.3% rise in prices generally. It's known, of course, as the rate of inflation. Our business correspondent Clodagh Rice is here to help us with this live. Clodagh, good to see you. This plays in, of course, to the cost of living, but were we expecting this rise?
We were expecting a rise, but maybe not one quite as big as this, Declan. So let's take a look at this chart where we can see how rapidly inflation rose to a record, a 40-year high at over 11% this time 2 years ago. Since then, it has come back down to right below the Bank of England's target rate of 2%. Now, the fact that inflation has come down doesn't mean that prices are falling. It means the rate at which they're rising had been slowing. But last month, it picked up again to 2.3%. And that's because of the impact of increases in energy prices like electricity and gas. And while those prices have come down from their recent peaks, they've stabilised at a level higher than what we'd all become used to. Let's look at why that is.
Prior to the Russia's invasion of Ukraine, there were very stable supply chains for energy into Europe. That invasion threw all that up in the air, and a lot of European countries, including the UK, had to start to source oil and gas from other parts of the world. That has come at a higher price, which we're still paying for.
Earlier today, we asked some shoppers in Belfast if they're feeling any better off.
The gas and the electricity has just went up, so there's a surprise. Every winter it's the same, so what else can you do? You have no other choice but to pay the extra.
I think the general consensus is it's like getting them last 2 months of salary and budgeting them correctly. And it's so easy nowadays, especially with the price of everything, to overspend, even if you just go out for one weekend,
My shopping bill has went from, say, £120 to £190, and that's for me and one wee baby. That's scary.
Today's figures are a reminder that the cost of living crisis is not over. While prices are more stable, they're still high. And the reason why this is important is because of what this will mean for interest rates. We know the direction of travel of interest rates is still downwards, but cuts are now expected at a slower pace. And there's some uncertainty about what will happen next, particularly as the full effects of last month's budget begin to be felt. But Declan, that could have implications for the rate at which interest rates could be cut.
Clodagh, thank you very much for your help with that. That's Clodagh Rice. To the general election in the Republic next, where they are halfway through the campaign ahead of polls opening. Now, these three big party leaders are each hoping to be the next Taoiseach, but the difference between Mary Lou McDonald of Sinn Féin and these two men is that they've already been Taoiseach. That also means, of course, that Simon Harris of Fine Gael and Micheál Martin of Fianna Fáil have records to defend. Kevin Sharkey reports from Dublin.
Simon, you are so welcome here. Can you jive?
No.
Okay.
Proof that in politics you don't always get your own way. You have to adapt.
Simon Harris, he comes from a very different era to Micheál Martin, but he's also a very different politician.
He is, and the thing about him is he's big on social media, and he always has been ever since he was Minister for Health. It was always about that personality with Simon Harris and wanting to connect to people. So it's a very different way of doing politics, and it's trying to engage with a younger voter, and you know, a younger voter who might be more inclined in this day and age to go and support Sinn Féin or to go and support the Social Democrats or Labour or whoever it might be that they're interested in. And it seems to be working, and it's just a very different way to how Leo Varadkar, his predecessor, did politics. It's very different to how Micheál Martin did politics.
Micheál Martin is a seasoned election contender, still competing despite past political challenges.
Micheál Martin, he's been around here for so many years, the best part of half a century. What does he still bring to politics?
I think this is a really interesting thing because Micheál Martin has been around a very long time. He was around the cabinet table when some decisions were being taken that weren't to Ireland's benefit, when the decision to bail out the banks was made, when the decision to bring in the Troika was made. If you were talking this time 5 years ago, a lot of people would have said Micheál Martin wasn't going to lead Fianna Fáil into the 2020 election. A lot of people said he wouldn't survive 2.5 years as Taoiseach, that there would be members of Fianna Fáil that were trying to take him out. Despite all of that, he is still around.
Apart from dealing with challenges from political opponents between now and election day, Micheál Martin and Simon Harris, well, they may also have a bit of a face-off with each other over the coming days. A significant political hurdle, and here's why. These two leaders will have to demonstrate the difference between Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, two old Civil War adversaries, after spending the best part of the last 5 years in government together.
On the election trail, a brief chance encounter before continuing with their separate campaigns, sometimes novel and unpredictable. Kevin Sharkey, BBC Newsline in Dublin.
Now, it's that time of year again as council Christmas trees are being lit up in towns and villages across Northern Ireland, and locals are getting a look at what's being done. And of course, they're not always impressed. Let's go into the archives, shall we? Remember, in 2010, there were grumbles in Downpatrick at this fenced-off feature in the town. Then in 2019, the people of Kilkeel were feeling less than festive with the spread of lights in their tree in the town. This year, it's the turn of Bushmills. Some residents are feeling a little underwhelmed by this. They say there's a hole in the middle of their Christmas tree. It's prompting a rethink, we're told. Here's Maria McCann.
You may know the song, "O Christmas Tree," with the lyrics, "How lovely are your branches." That's not what the people in Bushmills were singing this week after their town tree arrived.
It's hanging together, to be honest. It's terrible, but the people of Bushmills are used to it. We always get the worst of the bunch. It's the holes and all, really, isn't it? If you look anywhere else, there's so much more full. Like, it's just not a full tree, is it? We're missing branches and everything.
And it seems to be this gap in the middle of the tree is what people are complaining most about.
It came with a hole in the middle. That's why somebody put up a post saying, "Who stole the branches? Please return." 1 year we got one that was dead, and there was that big uproar, it got took down. Another year it was half up, half down. It's just got worse and worse as the years have gone by.
Ridiculous. I think they take the hand out of the people of Bushmills every single year. You went into Coleraine Main Street and see holes in a tree like that? Definitely not.
A Causeway Coast and Glens council spokesperson said, after initial transport, a tree requires time to settle. It says during this time, the Bushmills tree appears to have been vandalised with branches removed. Due to this, a decision was taken to replace it with a new tree, which was installed today. But not everyone thinks the old one was actually that bad.
Yeah, I think it should be given a chance to be decorated first before anybody judges it too harshly.
Yeah, I agree. I feel that you know, it's hard to tell what it will eventually, or what its potential was to look like. It could use some a little Christmas love.
People in the town can now expect to see the light switched on their new tree on the 6th of December. Maria McCann, BBC Newsline, Bushmills.
Let's turn to sport then. Northern Ireland footballer Kyle Lafferty says he has massive regrets about his career. Gavin Andrews is here. Interesting, Kyle blames himself though.
Yeah, always a brilliant talent on the pitch. An interesting character, though, off it. Lafferty has admitted that he feigned injury to avoid playing for Northern Ireland when he was younger. He hasn't been selected since receiving a 10-game ban for a sectarian comment he made on social media in 2022. In a wide-ranging interview, Lafferty has also revealed he recently suffered a relapse into his gambling addiction. He's been speaking to Stephen Watson.
Kyle Lafferty is one of Northern Ireland's best-known players. His goals propelled the country to the Euros in 2016. But Lafferty feels remorseful about errors of judgment he made.
Probably early on in my career, I didn't turn up at times where I should have. Deciding to go away on holidays rather than playing for your country at times. Maybe throwing in an injury where the rest of the team I was at might have been getting a few days off. And taking the days off rather than going to play for your country.
Because you weren't injured?
I wasn't injured, yeah. Just stuff like that there, just daft stuff that you look back and thinking, like, it's just so stupid of me.
Lafferty's international career was ultimately ended after he hit the headlines for a sectarian comment made on a social media video.
I'm not going to sit here and blame anyone else. The words came out of my mouth. Could have been handled better slightly. Maybe. I felt I was flung under the bus in a way. Obviously, never getting the call up since. Was it down to that video? I don't know, but I still felt I could have been a massive asset to the team. It is tough, obviously, not being able to play my last game at Windsor in front of the fans. It is what it is. It's football. You make mistakes and you have to live with them.
The 37-year-old from Enniskillen also continues to battle a gambling addiction.
I was off it for 3.5 years. Addiction is addiction. If you don't follow your programs or control your addictions, you fall back into it, and unfortunately I fell back into it, and I went and got the proper help. I'm now coming up to 6 months clean again.
Lafferty tasted much success in his club career, including 2 spells at Rangers, but feels very unfulfilled.
3 titles for Rangers, 4 cup medals, 89 caps, 20 goals, second highest goal scorer. Played with, against some of the world's best players, but I do have massive regrets. But it was all down to me.
So Lafferty rueful, but he told me currently, for the first time in years, he's content.
If I was happy on the pitch, I was probably gambling or I was doing something else off it. So to be able to tick all the right boxes and enjoying life right now, it's a good place to be at.
Derry City manager Tiernan Lynch says he's ready to go to work with his new club. He replaces Rory Higgins, who left by mutual consent last week. Lynch, who turned around the fortunes of Larne, says he wants to make Derry City the biggest club on the island. Here's our North West reporter, Kieran Turish.
A new era as Tiernan Lynch was unveiled as the Derry City boss. He signed a 3-year deal and admits he's got a challenging few weeks rebuilding the squad.
Proud and privileged, a massive football club with massive history and hopefully a massive future. When the opportunity came along, there was no second thinking about it. It was 100%.
44-year-old Lynch and his older brother Seamus, his assistant at Larne, has joined him at Brandywell. Their final game was ironically at the stadium last night as Larne faced Institute in the League Cup. The Inver Park side enjoyed unprecedented success under Lynch. In the second tier, he guided them to back-to-back Irish League titles. And they reached the UEFA Conference League phase this season, becoming the first team in Northern Ireland to do so.
Once I sat down and talked to him within 2 minutes, the presentation was incredibly professional, right about what he was doing, right across the board, right down to 6-week look across and training. Everything about that man oozed professionalism, and it's exactly what we need at this club.
I wouldn't be here if I didn't think that this club could be hugely successful. I've no doubt in my mind that Derry City Football Club can be the biggest club on the island of Ireland, and our job is to try and deliver that.
So a new chapter as Tiernan Lynch takes over at Derry City. The club says it's been impressed with his vision and energy to take the club forward. He himself can't wait to get to work. Kieran Turish, BBC Newsline at the Ryan McBride Brandywell Stadium.
Finally tonight, Ian Henderson and Rob Herring have both extended their contracts with Ulster. The club captain Henderson for 2 years and Herring for 1. That's your sport, Declan.
Thank you very much for that. It was a day to wrap up warm. That includes in Pomeroy, notwithstanding the lovely winter light. Bar is here with details of what more's to come.
It's already freezing out there tonight. Temperatures -2 degrees just a short time ago, and it's only going to get colder tonight. So the Met Office has issued a weather warning for ice this time, especially in untreated areas right through until late tomorrow morning. So we could see some disruption as a result. Temperatures could fall as low as -5 degrees in some spots. The northwesterly winds continue to bring in some showers tonight, so some places, especially towards the north coast, getting a fresh dusting of snow as well. So it's going to be a chilly, frosty and perhaps icy start for some of us tomorrow morning. And overall tomorrow it is going to feel quite chilly, especially in exposed areas and towards the north coast. That wind persisting, continuing to bring in some wintry showers. Otherwise, lots of dry weather across the island if you're travelling. Some sunshine too, but temperatures really struggling. For some, we're looking at just 2 or 3 degrees. And when you factor in those winds and also some wintry showers coming in from the northwest, it's going to feel more like -2 or -3. So certainly a day for the big coats and the winter woolies and layers. A chilly evening then to come. Some more wintry showers in the forecast. Temperatures again falling to freezing. So we're likely to see some fresh snow showers, especially over the hills and the mountains. Some low-level areas could get a slight dusting into the early hours of Friday morning as well. Temperatures maybe not quite as low as tonight, but still sub-zero in some countryside areas. Now Friday, a largely calm but cold picture across the UK and Ireland. Lots of sunshine in the forecast too. The winds light. It's this system that we're keeping an eye on heading our way this weekend, and that could be bringing some stormy weather our way. But before then on Friday, largely calm, the winds are light, 1 or 2 showers maybe towards the north coast there, sunshine, and temperatures maybe about 4 or 5 degrees. Temperatures on the rise over the weekend. We could see 13 degrees by the time we get into Saturday, but we're also expecting strong winds, gales and some heavy rain, so be prepared.
Righty, Barra, thank you very much. Do take it nice and easy on the roads if you have to go out tonight or early tomorrow morning. We'll see you back here 6:30 tomorrow evening. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it. Bye-bye.